Hi everyone, my name is Gabriel and this is the Hour of the Raven, your channel for everything Ravenloft, RPG, Dungeons and Dragons and horror. Today I'm going to review the adventure Vecna, Eve of Ruin, released by Wizards of the Coast as a celebration of the 50 years of Dungeons and Dragons, and also present my ideas on how to remake it into an epic horror adventure. Vecna Eve of Ruin returns once again to Barovia and features 4 Dark Lords from the classic Ravenloft setting: Vecna, Cass, Count Strahd and Lord Soth. In addition to this return to Ravenloft and its characters, 2 other factors motivated me to talk about this adventure. First, the players in my campaign urged me to make a video about the adventure, given the numerous similarities of my campaign, the Caravan of Doom, and the basic premise of Vecna, Eve of Ruin. The other reason that inspired me to create this video was my little collaboration with Mr. Welch on his excellent video, Making Vecna, Eve of Ruin Epic with awesome editors. Talking with Glenn about suggestions on how to improve the Ravenloft portion of the adventure, I started to get a lot of ideas about how these adventures could be more interesting. You can check out Mr. Welch's video at the link I'll leave below in the video description. He compiled his ideas in a PDF file at the DM's Guild in Mr. Welch Fixes for Vecna, Eve of Ruin. I will leave the link to the product below, which is available at Pay What You Want on the website. Also, my colleague at the Black Feather, Leandro Zerbinati, also launched a product on the DM's Guild, Vecna Eve of Ruin Companion, with ideas on how to improve the campaign. I will leave the link to the book below if you also want to check it out. Are you ready? So let's explore what mysteries and dangers Wizards of the Coast has prepared for this celebration of 50 years of D&D. Hour of the Raven. Vecna, Eve of Ruin presents itself as an special adventure, a celebration of 50 years of D&D, and 10 years of the 5th edition, the best-selling edition to date, and that reached the largest audience in the history of the game, according to Wizards of the Coast. The adventure is intended to be an epic battle against one of the most iconic villains in Dungeons & Dragons, which will take adventurers on a journey through different campaign settings, visiting notable characters and locations. When the first announcements about the adventure were released by Wizards, the curiosity of many dungeon masters and players was piqued, and I confess that even though I'm not a fan of 5th edition, especially regarding the treatment of the setting lore, I was curious about what would be presented. Vecna's participation immediately took me back to the epic adventure Die Vecna Die, a mega adventure that took place in Greyhawk, Ravenloft and Planescape, and which marked the end of the 2nd edition of the glorious AD&D era and the transition to the 3rd edition of Dungeons & Dragons. When they began to reveal more details about what the basic plot of the adventure was, I and the players were shocked by the coincidence with my own campaign, the Caravan of Doom. In my campaign, which began in 2005, the demiplane of Dread in the Ravenloft setting fell apart after the time of Unparalleled Darkness, bringing serious consequence to the D&D multiverse. Now, adopting a theme closer to cosmic horror than gothic horror, the characters are traveling across the plane and through several official D&D settings to try to avoid a threat capable of destroying the multiverse. The coincidences don't stop there, however. After the player's disastrous passage through Earth, Vecna took on a role of a central enemy in the campaign, and now they must find a way to defeat the God of Secrets. Having failed to recover the Sword of Cass, the adventurers are searching for a powerful artifact, the Rod of Seven Parts, and its fragments are scattered throughout several D&D worlds. Does this sound familiar? Seriously, I'm not kidding. If you want to check out my campaign, we have online records of the adventures on a website, in Portuguese, where you can read the latest adventures of the Caravan of Doom. The present arc against Vecna and the search for the Rod of the Seven Parts has been going on since 2019 and has not yet come to an end. This bizarre coincidence weren't enough. Some of the main characters that are used in Vecna Eve of Ruin adventure as important NPCs, such as Mordenkainen and Tasha, also have an important role in the plot of my own campaign. You can imagine how the descriptions of the plot of Vecna Eve of Ruin made everyone at my game table quite curious about these coincidences. When more details of the adventure were released, however, it became clear that the coincidence stopped at the basic proposal. And that's a relief, because the result of Vecna Eve of Ruin, for me at least, was unsatisfactory at best. At this point, after having reviewed a few 5th edition releases for Ravenloft, I must surely have the reputation of a grumpy old grognard, and perhaps there is truth to that statement. Don't get me wrong, but after reading this new adventure, the feeling I had was that the adventure was a huge missed opportunity. This is in no way an attack on the authors and professionals who worked on the adventure, but is more of a general dissatisfaction with Wizards' currently handling of D&D. This is reflected in the adventure, which, in addition to not respecting the pre-existing lore, also presents a journey that is a collection of locations and characters that previously appeared in 5th edition adventures. The adventure that aims to be the great celebration of 50 years of D&D, in the end it seems like a rushed and poorly developed run to previous adventures of 5e, a kind of greatest hits of the current edition of D&D. I will not present a chapter by chapter review here, and I know that there are many other channels with this proposal, and with ideas on how to fix some points of the adventure. This brief analysis and suggestions will also not be focused on the mechanics or balancing of the adventure, since although I have played the 5th edition a few times, it is also not my favorite system, and I honestly wouldn't know how to comment about it. The focus of this video will mainly be on the plot and lore involved in the adventure. That said, it is important to warn potential players that there will be spoilers about the plot of Vecna Eve of Ruin, so if you intend to play this campaign, it may be best to leave this video here, so as not to spoil your fun as a player, and let the God of Secrets feed on the power of this secret information. Basically, the plot of the adventure is as follows. Vecna is conducting a secret ritual to reshape the universe to his will. While this is happening, his old rival, Cass, is approached by the Dark Powers, who grant him the Crown of Lies, an artifact that will make him capable of flawlessly impersonating anyone, and free him from his domain of Tovak in the demiplane of Dread. He then disguises himself as Mordenkainen and joins the Wizard's Tree, where he manipulates everyone to fulfill his own agenda. His plan is to find and gather the fragments of the Rod of the Seven Parts, to free Mishka, the Wolf Spider, and then, together, turn against Vecna to defeat him and take his place in reshaping the universe. The adventure begins in Neverwinter, where the adventurers prevent cultists of Vecna from completing a ritual. By interrupting the ritual, the mystical energies create a supernatural link between the heroes and Vecna, which allows them to absorb powers through secrets they obtained. The adventure continues at some point in the future, where the Wizard's Tree, formed by Mordenkainen, Tasha, and Alustriel, conjure a wish spell to interrupt Vecna's plans. The spell fails, thanks to K's sabotage, but has the effect of magically conjuring the heroes to the presence of the Wizard's Tree in the sanctuary of Alustriel, in Sigil. Mordenkainen then suggests an alternative plan. Adventurers should seek out the fragments of the Rod of the Seven Parts to reforge the powerful artifact that will be capable of weakening Vecna and preventing his ritual. The adventurers then set out to try to recover the fragments. The first of them is in the Underdark, among Lot's followers. The second is found on a shipwrecked Spelljammer ship, in the body of a dead god in the Astral Sea. The third is in the moorlands in Eberron, inside a huge forged war colossus. The fourth is in the House of Death in Barovia, in Ravenloft. The fifth is in the possession of a red-robed wizard on Kryn, in the Dragonlance setting. The sixth is found in the Greyhawk setting, in a dungeon built by the Lich Acererak. And finally, the last fragment is in a hellish casino in Avernus. The heroes go on an extensive journey to recover the fragments of the Rod of the Seven Parts. Upon completing this quest, they turn it over to Mordenkainen, only to discover in a major plot twist that Mordenkainen was Cass in disguise and had manipulated them. Cass manages to defeat Tasha and Alustriel and escape to the lower planes, where he intends to use the rod to free Miska, the wolf spider, and then join forces to attack Vecna together. In turn, Loth and her demonic forces are allied with Vecna to fight against Cass and his minions. The adventurers must defeat Cass, extract from him the secrets of Vecna's location, and then confront the God of Secrets to stop his ritual. This is the plot of Vecna Eve of Ruin, and I confess that despite some good ideas, in general it had many flaws and missed opportunities. As with the entire 5th edition, there isn't much respect for D&D's lore and backstory. The story of Kaz and Vecna undergo changes, and the book's artwork seems to suggest that these mortal enemies have known each other in the past while they were both still human, and even seem to suggest that they were more than partners in their ambitions for power. However, despite these changes, there is no further development about this, and such changes are not even relevant to the plot in general. Some of the book's proposals also don't make sense. For example, early on, it is said that Cass is approached by the Dark Powers, who provide him with the Crow of Lies and freed him from his domain of dread. In the classic setting, the Dark Powers of Ravenloft were never defined, and if there was anything that was known about their goals, it was that they were the jailers who imprisoned the Dark Lords in their domains, in constant torment in their private hell. Why then would these Dark Powers themselves now decide to act directly, and on top of that, releasing and giving information and artifacts to one of their condemned Dark Lords? Another issue that seems to me to be a more serious problem in the structure of the plot of the adventure is that Vecna, the great villain of the title, practically does not participate in the adventure until the moment of the final clash. There is no foreshadowing of his presence or repercussions of his actions, even if only through his cultists in the campaign. There is also no use of the main artifacts involving these characters, such as Vecna's hand and eye and the sword of Cass. There is also no clear consequence on the effects of Vecna trying to reshape the multiverse. The Wizard's Tree communicates to the heroes they have felt the mystical effects of this ritual, but there does not appear to be any sense of urgency or danger in their actions. Another point that bothers me about this adventure is that it is not a celebration of 50 years of D&D, but rather a collection and revisitation of the main adventures from the last 10 years of 5th edition. Segal in Planescape is barely explored. Ravenloft is limited to the location of Death House. Greyhawk is just an Acererak dungeon as in Tomb of Annihilation, and adventurers return again to Underdark and Avernus, from Out of the Abyss and Descent into Avernus. Ultimately, my biggest problem with this adventure is perhaps the big reveal and twist that Mordenkainen was Cass wearing a disguise the entire time. Honestly, it amazes me that mages of great power like Alustriel and Tasha were deceived by Cass, and at no point suspect about the strange behavior of Mordenkainen. This solution reminds me of a classic episode of Scooby-Doo and seems poorly developed and forced. As you can see, my problems with this adventure are many, and that's exactly why I'm not going to try to present solutions to fix it, but rather propose the total reformulation to remake it into something different, an epic horror adventure with the God of Secrets as the great nemesis of the campaign. The first step in remaking this adventure would be to establish the presence of Vecna and assure a greater participation of the villain, and the consequences of his plan to reshape reality. The ritual performed by Vecna is poorly explained in the book, but this is not the first time that the God of Secrets has attempted this feat. In the adventure Die Vecna Die, Vecna managed to invade Sigil, the center of the great wheel of the plains, and the God of Secrets almost managed to reshape the universe to his will, having been prevented from his goal by a group of adventurers. Vecna may have been prevented from completing his ritual, but perhaps, before he was defeated, he uncovered ancient secrets of the universe, and even prepared the ground for returning to his ambition. An interesting theory that I saw on Jordan's channel, and which seemed to be something planned to be used by the 5th edition, is that the mysterious black obelisks found throughout several 5th edition adventures were artifacts of great power created by an alien race called the Spellweavers, and later were also used by the Netherese civilization. Vecna, however, stole and hid the knowledge about the magic of these obelisks. Could Vecna have erased knowledge about the existence and magic of these obelisks from reality while he was in his ritual in Sigil at the end of the Die Vecna Die adventure? But what could these obelisks do? The adventure Rime of the Frost Maiden and Pandelver and Below indicate that these artifacts can allow time travel and act as a kind of save point in the timeline, which would allow the civilization that created them to go back in time in the event of a tragedy that destroyed them. If Vecna kept the secret about the obelisks and their powerful magic, he could truly become a great cosmic threat, since if his plans to reshape the universe are threatened, or if he was defeated, he could go back in time and correct any flaws in his plans, hiding traces of his actions and destroying enemies before they are prepared or able to stop him. This idea is similar to the plot of the film Edge of Tomorrow, where Tom Cruise's character managed to relive the same day several times, restarting the day each time he is defeated, due to a bizarre temporal effect. How terrible would this be if Vecna was in control of this power and could go back centuries in time, being able to retrace his steps with each setback encountered, to be able to execute his plan to perfection. It is also necessary to think about what the consequences of this powerful ritual would be. If we are talking about a threat to rewrite the multiverse, how does that affect reality? My idea for this catastrophic event would be the merging of all planes of existence. By reshaping the multiverse, Vecna would slowly break the Great Wheel, and the different planes of existence will begin to slowly overlap in catastrophic ways. Reality will become fragile and malleable. What would happen if suddenly parts of the Nine Hells or the Abyss began to emerge and overlap the material plane? What would the world look like if the barriers between the Shadowfell, the Feywild, or even the elemental planes began to weaken and overlap? How did the opposing forces of goodness, evil, chaos, and order would react to the unexpected clash of the planes? Where would the souls of the dead go if the planes of existence no longer received them in the afterlife? Perhaps even spells capable of creating portals will begin to fail, as mystical paths between planes cannot be clearly traced. If these catastrophic and cosmic events were slowly happening, and if Vecna managed through his time travels to perfectly hide the traces of his actions, how did the gods react to these events? Would they be involved in conflicts with each other? Would they be seeking the truth? Or would they be able to act against Vecna? Even if some or all of these powerful agents could be successfully in opposing Vecna, the God of Secrets could go back in time and correct his mistakes, hide his secrets, and eliminate rivals before they can discover his plans, creating a scenario of paranoia and horror, where Vecna and his cultists always seem to be one step ahead of his opponents. More than that, in this campaign, Vecna may have already started to implement small changes in reality. This can give creative freedom to the narrator to make changes to specific points in the setting, playing with alternative realities and confusing players to understand what is happening to the world. A mood of epic tragedy and horror is something I would implement in this remake of the adventure. Vecna is one of the most iconic Dungeons & Dragons villains, and his name should be evoked with terror by the players and characters. The first adventure to focus entirely on Vecna was the adventure Vecna Lives, which presents itself as a horror adventure. In the first scene of this adventure, the players control the powerful group of mages that compose the Circle of Eight of Greyhawk. And in a confrontation with Vecna, the characters are decimated. Only after this bloody and lethal opening do the players assume the characters they will effectively control in the rest of the campaign, and begin a plot to stop Vecna's plans. Vecna Lives is a horror adventure in every sense, and this dark and macabre theme is also present in the other two adventures involving Vecna, Vecna Reborn and Die Vecna Die. Vecna calls for a horror adventure, and unfortunately, Vecna Eve of Ruin does not translate these elements, either in the art presented or in the adventure proposal. My suggestion for the beginning of this remade adventure is to emulate the beginning of Vecna Lives. Start this adventure with its final scene. Let the players create high-level characters, and tell them that they are fighting Vecna to try to stop him from succeeding in his plans to change the multiverse. The heroes had with them the eye and hand of Vecna, important artifacts that allowed them to get here. Let the adventurers attack Vecna with all they can, but slaughter them with cruelty, as 5th edition rarely allows the narrator. Show the horror of Vecna as a god in all his glory and horror, murdering the characters in combat and creating a feeling of despair. If you prefer a different approach, make the combat deadly but be fair, because even if for some reason the characters beat Vecna at this point, their victory will be hollow. The defeat and death of the characters is just the beginning, however. When the last character is defeated, they will magically return to the past, not as the current characters, but regressing in level to the starting level of the campaign. The adventurers return to the past at the exact moment in which, in Sigil, they managed to obtain the artifact of the eye and hand of Vecna. After a long search for rumors that these artifacts were in the City of Doors, and before amputating parts of their bodies to use such artifacts. But how and why the adventurers didn't stay dead when defeated by Vecna? Perhaps the mystical link mentioned in the Vecna Eve of Ruin adventure can be used at this point. The mystical energies of Vecna's ritual may have contaminated the characters with part of Vecna's essence, or perhaps the fact that these heroes were using the eye or hand of Vecna caused the Obelisks magic to mistake them for Vecna and return the adventurers in time to have a new chance to avoid defeat. When they return to the past, leave the heroes confused and tell them that the memories of this last confrontation are vague, as if these memories were glimpses or dreams that quickly disappear from the minds of those who have just awakened. They have no memories of where and why they were confronting Vecna, or of anything beyond this moment in the past, only having glimpses of the final battle. In a short time, they are left with nothing more than a feeling that something is very wrong, and a permanent discomfort as they hear anything related to Vecna. At this point, confused and unable to understand these conflicting memories in their minds, they must be approached by the mages of the Wizard's Tree. If you like, they can even be conjured in the halls of the Sanctum of the Wizard's Tree by the Wizard's Wish spell, or a less magical or supernatural approach can be taken to this contact. Personally, I would prefer that the divinations of the wizards led them to the heroes, or perhaps one of them, investigating the matter, was searching for the eye and hand of Vecna and found the heroes. The original Wizard's Tree were Elminster, Dalamar, and Mordenkainen, and it can still have this configuration if you prefer. However, the setup presented in Vecna Eve of Ruin adventure can also serve perfectly, especially if the fate of Dalamar and Elminster has become a mystery. Who knows, maybe they already got in Vecna's way somehow, and the God of Secrets eliminated or imprisoned them after one of his many returns to the past. For this remake, I am not including Cass or any other undercover infiltrator. If distrust and dubious morality is what you need, Tasha is a figure of questionable morality who could betray the group if the narrator feels necessary, and Mordenkainen has always had a grey and pragmatic morals, more focused on neutrality than good or evil, and can also be used as a manipulative agent without necessarily being the hidden vampire Cass. The Wizard's Tree are at a dangerous point of discovery, concerned about the disappearance of important wizards around the world, and to understand the phenomenon of overlapping planes, they come together to try to discover the truth. They reach the adventurers through divination, or they were already after the eye and hand of Vecna, following a clue left by one of their missing colleagues. If you prefer, they could even have used the Wish spell, and the conjuration of a band of adventurers bearing the eye and hand of Vecna, and with vague memories of a mysterious conflict with this deity, could be the clue in the right direction to the discovery of this mystery, and point to Vecna as the mysterious enemy. The planes are collapsing, and the city of Sigil may be the last refuge where it is still possible to find portals between the different planes. The Wizard's Tree gathers in a sanctuary in Sigil to try to take action, and will suggest a bold plan to find information about this new enemy. Mordenkainen suggests sending the adventurers on a dangerous quest that will take them directly to the demiplane of Dread. Vecna resided for many years in the demiplane of Dread, and perhaps some remnant of his domain still exists in those lands, and some information can be found about his secret plans. Perhaps Vecna could not cover his tracks in these lands, fearing to interfere in the demiplane of Dread, where he spent so long imprisoned as a Dark Lord by the Dark Powers. Tasha also revealed that there is a powerful artifact in the demiplane of Dread that can harm an enemy of such power as Vecna. The Sword of Kas was created by Vecna, who imbued this magical weapon with part of his own essence, and in the past the sword was capable of seriously wounding the God of Secrets. The last whereabouts of this weapon was with Kas the Destroyer, the Dark Lord of Tovag. Mordenkainen assures the adventurers that he will be able to remove them from the demiplane of Dread when they are successful, and gives them an item that will allow them only once to communicate with him across the demiplane of Dread when they complete their mission. With the aim of unraveling Vecna's plans and recovering the Sword of Kas, the adventurers travel through Sigil in search of a portal to the Land of the Mists. Explore the city of Sigil and its strangeness and wonders, as well as how the portal to the Land of the Mists and its key must be found. If you want some action and horror, have Vecna cultists start chasing the adventurers in this search for a portal, with the aim of destroying them and recovering the eye and hand of Vecna. Once through this mysterious portal, the adventurers reach Tovag, the domain of Kas in the demiplane of Dread of the Ravenloft setting. In this military domain dominated by a vampire general, adventurers can search for information about Vecna and Kas. More information about these domains can be found in the adventure Vecna Reborn, which take place primarily in the domain of Tovag. The adventurers' investigation revealed that the domain of Cavitus disappeared into the mists after Vecna escaped the demiplane of Dread, but Kas still remains as the tyrant of Tovag, who incessantly seeks information about the whereabouts of his greatest enemy, preparing for the final confrontation. The demiplane of Dread also appears to be suffering from Vecna's interference, or perhaps from the sinister events from the time of the unparalleled darkness. Domain borders are weakened, and their Dark Lords may finally be able to escape the borders of their own domains. Drastic and supernatural effects may be occurring, such as during the Grand Conjunction. Adventurers can choose to confront Kas in his fortress, to defeat him and take his evil sword from his hands, or even seek some kind of alliance with Kas against Vecna, his mortal enemy. Kas will not part with his sword peacefully, and may be defeated or accompany the group as an occasional ally. If defeated in combat, the vampire is unlikely to meet his final death, and may become yet another dark force on the trail of adventurers seeking revenge. Information that can be extracted or traded with Kas reveal where the traces of Vecna's domain might possibly lie. There is a mysterious domain, a black hole where other forgotten domains revolve and float into oblivion after being devoured by the mists. The domain of Claw was first introduced in Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft as a mysterious burial ground for other domains. The name of this domain was inspired by an ancient character from the classic setting, an evil and powerful wizard and insane clockmaker capable of creating incredible magical time devices. If you want to use this domain, I suggest using the version we create for the book Dread Space, where we present a version that integrates elements of the classic character of Claw and the 5th edition version, to present a domain centered on the ghost of this evil clockmaker and the mysterious spiral of mists of the domain devouring black hole. The hero's objective will be to find the ruins of the citadel of Cabitus, the center of Vecna's power and domain as Dark Lord of Ravenloft. To reach this ruin that floats this spiral of destruction, adventurers will need to negotiate a passage through the mists with the Vistani. If you are using our Dread Space book, use the tribe of the Aperuza, known for sailing the mist nebula of Dread Space in Spelljammer Vardos ships. Arriving in Cabitus, in this spiral of destruction, the adventurers must face the mysterious temporal effects of Claw and rush to invade Vecna's fortress, where they must overcome its magical defenses and the undead that still guard the place to find the secret library of Vecna. In this profane library, adventurers must find notes and research from the God of Secrets, where important information about the plot of the adventure must be revealed. Hints on the mysterious location of the unholy ritual performed by Vecna and on the mystery of the black obelisks can be found, as well as Vecna's concern to try to find and secure a unique artifact which could foretell his entire plan, the powerful Rod of the Seven Parts, a weapon that, if reforged, could be capable of infusing even a being of divine power with the essence of order and disrupting his planned ritual. With information about Vecna's plans, the adventurers accomplish their goals in Ravenloft and can again contact Mordenkainen to be extracted from the mists. But is there really any way to escape? If you want to do something simpler and more direct, the Wizard's Tree can take advantage of the fragile borders between the planes and remove adventurers from Ravenloft. I would extend the danger and the adventurer's journey through the mists. After Mordenkainen received the information discovered, he will report with regret that the adventurers were a necessary sacrifice for the greater good, abandoning them forever in the demiplane of Dread. Betrayed, they would have to find a way to escape the land of the mists on their own. This exit may involve another adventure in Ravenloft, or even a journey to the domain of Claw in search of the ruins of Nedrogat Keep of Citicus, where Lord Sort once resided, another Dark Lord who escaped the mists. Perhaps in one of the magical mirrors in the throne room, there is still a reflection revealing the exact moment in which Soth escaped from the mists, and in this mirror reality, it could still be used as a portal for them to also escape. Once back in Sigil, adventurers can rejoin the Wizard's Tree or decide to continue their investigation on their own in a quest to uncover the location of Vecna's ritual, the fragments of the Rod of the Seven Parts, and also to find and destroy the magic obelisks to allow Vecna to finally be defeated. To justify traveling through the worlds and settings of Dungeons and Dragons, I would make the obelisks and fragments of the Staff of Law scattered throughout each of the classic Dungeons and Dragons settings. Each of the obelisks will be protected, secretly or openly, by Vecna's servants, and destroying them or interrupting their mystical energies must always be a difficult task. As the adventurous progresses, Vecna's cultists, assassins, and other monstrosities must come after the adventurers, increasing the climate of horror and paranoia, making them increasingly stronger targets as they represent a danger to the God of Secrets' plans. With each new obelisk found and destroyed by the heroes, they must be plagued by conflicting memories of temporal paradoxes, of Vecna's many attempts to achieve his goals, which is slowly destroying reality and exposing the horrors of his actions. This knowledge can gradually drive the characters crazy. The character's mystical link with Vecna can also be used as a horror tool. Perhaps they begin to glimpse the horrors committed by Vecna, or begin to hear whispers and threats from the God of Secrets in their minds. Who knows? Perhaps Vecna will decide to reveal to one or another player some sordid secret, which could lead to conflict between them, or with allies, to corrupt or destroy them from the inside. The Rod of Seven Parts is an ancient and powerful artifact created in the Dawn War, and was used to defeat Miska, the wolf spider. When this artifact came into contact with Miska's chaotic essence, the staff was fragmented into 7 parts. For this adventure, I would make the Rod of the Seven Parts something even more powerful and mystical. The fragments of the staff exude strong mystical energies of order and have supernatural features, being desired as sources of great power. The artifact and obelisks are mechanisms used to make adventurers explore the many classic Dungeons & Dragons settings, paying true homage to the 50 years of D&D. Rather than just referencing the most recent 5th edition adventurers, I suggest revisiting all 10 classic D&D settings. 3 of these settings will be explored as means to access other settings. Spelljammer and Planescape were created as settings that serve as a connection between the many settings and worlds of D&D, and Ravenloft also connects all these settings, but imprisoning different parts of this world in its misty prison. We are already using Sigil, the City of Doors, as a hub for these portals between worlds, as well as doing the tragic convergence of the planes of existence to pay homage to Planescape, and Ravenloft has already been used as the first starting point in this plot. Spelljammer will be used later in our story, which leaves 7 staff fragments for 7 classic D&D settings: Greyhawk, Dragonlance, Forgotten Helms, Eberron, Birthright, Dark Sun, and Mystara. The search for the fragments of this artifact must also be accompanied by a way of unraveling the mysteries about the location of Vecna's secret ritual, or the location of the obelisks. If the heroes are still in alliance with the Wizard's Tree, they can help the adventurers follow clues about the whereabouts of these staff's fragments and the locations of portals to take them to these locations. I am not so well versed in the lore of these settings as I am with Ravenloft, but the DM may try to use their most notable locations and characters as elements in these adventures. Here are my suggestions for each of these settings. In the Forgotten Realms, there are countless places and agents of power who may be in possession of the artifact. Perhaps the heroes will have to seek information and secrets about Vecna and the location of the fragment of the staff in Candlekeep, or obtain such secrets on the dangerous streets of Baldur's Gate or Waterdeep. The fragment of the staff could be in the hands of some powerful enemy, being in the vault of Zastan Fortress in Day, in the subterranean ruins of a Netherese city, in the house of a Drow matriarch of Maison Bezerhan, or in Shanatar's treasury in Skullport. On Earth, the city of Greyhawk could be an important starting point for the investigations, and perhaps the Circle of Eight and the alliance or enmity with Mordenkainen could be explored. Perhaps Vecna's homeland will hide secrets of its past in the ruins of his empire, or the heroes may have to confront or negotiate with the dangerous Acererak for revelations about their former master plans. Perhaps the fragments of the staff lies in the ruins of the Suluai's empire, beneath the Sea of Dust, or is in the possession of Yus the Old, the son of Tasha and Grast, a demigod and sworn enemy of Vecna. In Dragonlance, the heroes may have to investigate the whereabouts of the Staff Fragment or the secrets of Vecna in the library of Palantas with Tastinus, the avatar of the deity Gideon, who records everything in his chronicles. Or they may have to break into the Tower of Magic of Palantas to find clues discovered by Dalamar or his former master Raistling. The fragment of the rod could be in the haunted fortress of Lord Soth, in the hoard of an ancient dragon who served Tarkisis, or in the flying citadel of one of the Dragon Lords. In Eberron, the best place for characters to experience the setting is in its iconic city of Sharn, the metropolis that hides secrets and wonders. Perhaps they can unlock Vecna Secrets by deciphering draconic prophecies, or have to engage into a noir or espionage investigation of intrigue and mystery among the powerful dragon market houses. Perhaps the Staff Fragment is with cults of the dragon below, or with the terrible Dalkir. My favorite option would be to make the Staff Fragment an industrial secret of Merrick's Kennet in the creation of the Warforged, and now it is lost in the ruins of Sire in the Moorlands, or in the possession of the enigmatic Lord of Blades. For Birthright, throw the heroes into the midst of intrigue, conflict and war between the diverse nations, kingdoms and races of the setting. Perhaps knowledge of Vecna's secrets, or the Shard of the Staff, can be found only with the immortal elves, and perhaps they are in the possession of the dangerous Rubble, the Manslayer. The Staff Fragment may be used as part of a relic of great power, such as the scepter of one of the monarchs of divine power, or may be in the possession of a powered Unshaven aberration, such as the mighty Gorgon. In the known world of Mystara, clues to the fragment of the staff, the Obelisk, or the plans of Vecna may perhaps be found in the powerful empire of Alpatia, or in the great school of magic of Glantry. Maybe their unique insight into magic and the presence of the immortals could be a valuable source of information against Vecna. The fragment of the staff could be in the possession of the Council of the Immortals, and the Adventurous would have to travel to their city on the moon to negotiate it. Perhaps it could have been used by the ancient civilization of Blackmoor as an energy source and is now lost in its ruins. The staff fragment might be in the Hollow World, and the magical properties of this artifact might be an essential part of the magic that maintains the preservation of this underground world and its ancient civilizations. In the unforgiving world of Dark Sun, let the characters suffer the hardships of the desert and the danger that lies within it, until they find one of its city-states and its sorcerer kings. I would place the Shard of the Staff in this world as an artifact of power linked to the history of Arthur's decline, perhaps inside the pristine tower itself, and guarded by the powerful Dracolish Dragod. Surviving the journey to this location would place the characters in a challenging and deadly fight. Once the Obelisks are destroyed, the adventurers know they have a real chance of defeating the God of Secrets once and for all. They must then return with the fragment of the Rod of the Seven Parts to the Wizard's Tree so that they can finally reforge the artifact. There, with all the clues found, the Wizard's Tree will have finally discovered the location where Vecna is conducting his unholy ritual. If the DM wants to insert some twist or betrayal into the Wizard's Tree, this would be the ideal time. Instead of Cast revealing himself to be Mordenkainen in disguise the whole time, a perfect candidate for this type of betrayal would be Tasha or Igvil, a witch with a history of great evil and ambition, and who could use her vast knowledge of demonology to attack their allies with hosts of powerful fiends. Tasha may have been seduced by Vecna's promises of power, Or perhaps she has plans of her own, but she will attempt to obtain one or more of the following artifacts before escaping, such as the Eye or Hand of Vecna, the Sword of Gas, or the Rod of Law. At this point, there is only one last classic setting left to be explored. The secret location of Vecna's ritual is on an ancient and destroyed world, in a corrupted and ruined crystal sphere, with strange magical effects that bar mystical access and prevent even the approach of ordinary spelljamming ships. If there is a way to reach this dead world, only Vecna knows it, and this secret is heavily guarded by the God of Secrets, having been erased from existence. Now, it's time for the adventurers to explore the last of the classic D&D settings and dive into Spelljammer. To reach the lost world where Vecna performed his ritual, the adventurers must find and master the mythical ship in the shape of a manta ray that gives the setting its name, the Spelljammer ship, about which only legends and rumors are known. Perhaps the adventurers can seek information about Vecna and the whereabouts of the living Spelljammer ship in the asteroid city of the Rock of Brawl, or have to become involved in the conflicts of the wars between the Skrulls and the Imperial Elven fleet to obtain this information. Maybe these mysteries will have to be negotiated with a powerful Mercane, extracted from the minds of elder brains in Illithid Nautiloids, or wrestled from the evil Niogi. Perhaps the location of the great Spelljammer ship might be hidden in the ancient artifacts of the Yuna, the ancient and extinct civilization believed to have been the creator of the magical helms and artifacts that allow navigation through wild space. Once a way to unravel the route or locate the Spelljammer manta ray ship has been found, the adventurers must sail there to take control of the living ship and the citadel built on its back, which is currently dominated by a crazed lich. With the Spelljammer ship conquered, the adventurers can finally navigate to the dead planet where Vecna performs his ritual, as the living ship is able to overcome the areas of instability and barriers that prevent the approach of the planet. Now, the final battle of the heroes against the God of Secrets remains. Vecna cannot interrupt his ritual, which is why he cannot use his vast powers against the heroes. Traitors who have helped Vecna, occasional allies, or others who have been involved in this battle and may have somehow arrived here with the help of Vecna or with the players, can all participate in this final battle. With the Obelisk destroyed, there will be no new opportunity for either Vecna or the adventurers. A final twist, however, to make everything more dramatic. The Rod of Seven Parts is not capable of destroying Vecna, and in fact, the God of Secrets planted false information about this artifact to deceive his enemies. He knew that if he gathered directly the fragments imbued with the essence of order, he would attract the unwanted attention of other gods, who might discover his plans, and so he plotted to have his own enemies bring him the stabilizing energy of order that will give consistency and form to the final stage of the ritual, keeping his reformulated universe cohesive. This revelation must arrive to destroy the hero's hope at the moment of the final battle. The universe is already being rewritten, and Vecna has become so powerful that nothing can destroy him except himself. There is a chance, however. If all goes well, the adventurers should be in the possession or have the means to obtain in the final battle the Eye and the Hand of Vecna and the Sword of Gas. The Eye of Vecna will be able to see the weak points and cracks in the mystical barrier that protect the God of Secrets, and Vecna's hand, wielding the Sword of Gas, will be able to deal the killing blow to Vecna. After all, even in this new reality, Vecna will be defeated by his own hand with a weapon he created and which contains a fragment of his essence. Having defeated Vecna in the final battle, the heroes will have triumphed, and the ritual to reshape the universe will finally be stopped. Perhaps Vecna has already done great and irreparable damage to reality, and nothing would be the same as before. Or perhaps the end of his ritual could put an end to all his machinations. Personally, I would make all the alternative lore of 5th edition a derivation of the reality imposed by Vecna in his ritual, and with the end of his plans, the multiverse of D&D would be saved, returning to the continuity of its original timeline. However, each DM is in charge of building the universe that suits them best. And what would become of Vecna? Part of his divine essence was sacrificed to fuel this powerful and exhausting ritual. Weakened, he would be swallowed again by the dark powers, back to the demiplane of dread, to an eternity of torment. Perhaps Cass can finally try his great revenge once again. Well, that's it folks. This video took me longer than usual, and I think I ended up getting carried away by my wild and megalomaniac ideas. If you have made it this far, I hope my suggestion inspires you to create your own adventures, or at least that you find the video reasonably interesting to watch. And you, do you intend to narrate Vecna Eve of Ruin? What did you think of the adventure? What changes do you want to make in your own sessions? Write below in the comments. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, and in the next video we will resume our exploration of the mists, exploring in depth the secrets and mysteries of the dread doppelganger.